Welcome everyone to this exclusive special screening of JioHotstar's next big epic, King and Conqueror. Thank you for being here.
And this world building that you say, this phrase, it actually starts at various micro levels, I would say. Irrespective of whether it's a fantastical, mystical, magical realism sort of film, I think that inner world creation happens at that actor level.
I've been a massive Tim Burton fan, man, growing up. So I know that these films that I grew up kind of really looking at, and even a Batman that he made, was set up in a Gotham that I never could think of, you know. Basically, it's every filmmaker's own perception of the world, the way he sees the world the film is in. And that's how world building comes from.
And then I started sort of inventing 10 rules to get to truth. Okay. And these 10 rules to get to truth then became a system about how to try and see how you can get to the landscape of the human face. And so I decided that I'll make it, sort of very bare. So I don't use lights at all, whether it's Neerja or Aarya.
When you're part of a world that's very different and that's not an obvious world for the audience, when you find truth in it, when you surrender, your conviction and your flow is what is going to make it immersive for the audience.
Please join me in welcoming Ram Madhvani, just one at a time, Shriya Pilgaonkar, and Aditya Sarpotdar. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
We have all just been lost in the world of JioHotstar's King and Conqueror, and I'm so excited to be talking to all of you about what it takes to build homegrown fantasy universes and massive franchises.
There's only one man who's doing that, by the way.
That is true. We will come to that. But Shriya, you thinking of the last few years, we've also seen you in these massive worlds like Mirzapur, of course, as well as fantasy-esque universes like Taaza Khabar. I think that's a fair way to describe that. And most recently, as the creepy head of an immortal cult in Mandala Murders. Ram, you have held us at gunpoint on flights. You have, with Neerja, you have taken us back in time with Waking of a Nation. And I'm so excited to be doing this with you, considering you're now stepping into the world of VR, your new exciting technology that you're playing with. And at one point, if I'm not wrong, you were even developing an Indian Game of Thrones, or what was called that.
Gosh.
So it is wonderful to have you here.
Thank you.
Aditya, you have taken us on adventures with detectives and zombies, and obviously last year's Munjya, the breakout success. And now we are, 6 weeks away from Thama?
2 months.
2 months.
Yeah. Don't remind me, man.
We're very much here to talk about that, so I will be reminding you. Yeah. I want to start by talking to all of you about a term that gets thrown around a lot, which is world building. We hear this word from filmmakers, from film writers, etc. I'm curious to know what that word really means, and what does that really look like? Is it sort of a lot of sticky notes? Is it is it just typing away furiously at a laptop? When you're imagining worlds, what does that look like?
So world building, see, when you kind of are developing a story, or you have a basic one-line idea, you know that the world that the film is set up in, or the idea is set up in, has to be unique to the story, right? It could be anything. It could be like a post-apocalyptic, or it could be a flashback, or it could be something that's set up in the near future. But I do feel that it comes straight from that one line of the story. Now, when you're clear about what world you want to kind of set the story in, for me, it's always that this world has to be a world that I've not seen before. And I think every filmmaker looks at it in his own perspective. Like every filmmaker has his own way of deciphering a certain world, or the way he looks at how do I tell this story the best in the world it's set in. Because I do feel that if you kind of like the world, you kind of enter the world, you get a little more closer to the narrative. And I do completely believe that now, in the past few years, when you are offering a big screen experience, the world becomes very important. What world are you inviting the audience into? Like, what is the world you're trying to set them up in? And we do see films that are set into a very present day, realistic world that a lot of cinema is kind of set in. But when we are doing these genres of horror and mystery, or even the adventure genre, it's very important to have your own take at the way you see as a filmmaker this world you're setting it in. And I've been a massive Tim Burton fan, man, growing up. So I know that these films that I grew up kind of really looking at, and even a Batman that he made, was set up in a Gotham that I never could think of, Basically, it's every filmmaker's own perception of the world, the way he sees the world the film is in, and that's how world building comes from. But see, I think it's just a certain kind of a term to say the backdrop of a story is X, and that's the world it's set in. So world building and all, it's thoda bada shabd hai wo, world building and all that, but I think it's the world that the story is set in.
Ram, what about you? Is it a similar process? And for you, is it narrative and character coming first, or is it world when you're sort of stepping into something that is sort of, call it larger than life or heightened reality?
So, I sort of formulated my own system of filmmaking, okay, which is called System 360. So after a while, I just got tired of lights. I got tired of saying action. I got tired of saying cut. I got tired of trolleys and cranes and all of this. So
this is your famous Madhvani method.
So it's called System 360, and I decided that my actors couldn't go wherever they feel like. And my camera would follow the actors. And so I don't use trains, trolleys or cranes or any of this. And so a lot of the work that I do comes from the way I want to work. And the way I want to work is
Sorry, also just to clarify, you're also not calling action or cut. You're very much just trying to
I'm basically, because I feel that the word action changes the molecules in your body. So if today, just now, if I said so your first question and action.
I would be like this.
Yeah, exactly. And so what I tend to do is I put these rules down and I started doing it for an ad many years ago, which was called Har Ek Friend Zaruri Hota Hai for Airtel, where it's an ad where kids are singing in a classroom.
We know it very well.
Yeah, so you can't make it more fake than that, right? Kids singing in a classroom. So I said, how do I make it real? And then I started sort of inventing 10 rules to get to truth. Okay. And these 10 rules to get to truth then became a system about how to try and see how you can get to the landscape of the human face. And so I decided that I'll make it, sort of very bare. So I don't use lights at all, whether it's Neerja or Aarya, no thermocols. I don't get my actor to ever talk to, sir, mera look kidhar hai? Acha, ye thermocol ka ye jo mark hai na, wahan dekhna hai aapko. I don't like all of that. I don't like the idea that an actor is doing the other actor a favor by being giving lines. So I don't like all of that. So I invented a system, and then from that system was trying to get to truth. And then a lot of my life is now spent in telling people how not to make films in the way that people make films. So I think it's really about, I think my job is really to have a vision and to pass it on. And second is to be an evangelist about the world that I'm, or the system that I'm creating. So.
And Shriya, for you, when you are pitched projects where there is more than narrative and tone and character, there are these heightened worlds, either as a franchise or there's a fantasy element. Is it all on paper? Is it on the script? Do you prefer to be narrated to? How do you get a sense of what they're describing in terms of that world? And are you then is there a bigger element of trust that I'm really trusting this filmmaker or team to bring this world to life?
Firstly, it's very rare to be offered a world that's fantastical, that's not rooted in reality, because in the past few years, at least most of the work that I've done has been very rooted in reality, if I may say so. So when you do get a world like Taaza Khabar, where there is this magical Vardhan, or a Mandala Murders, where you are chopping thumbs because you believe in this yast, there's a certain thrill to it. And this world building that you say, this phrase, it actually starts at various micro levels, I would say. Irrespective of whether it's a fantastical, mystical, magical realism sort of film, I think that inner world creation happens at that actor level. First, I think it tends to be a very isolated experience. But overall, the rhythm, the sur, is something that is set with the writers and the directors. And in the details, I would say, because you can't come on set with a selfish, narrow vision of how you want this world to be. So this process of surrendering is very important. And I also think that when you're part of a world that's very different and that's not an obvious world for the audience, when you find truth in it, when you surrender, your conviction and your flow is what is going to make it immersive for the audience. And all the films, like the ones that he also mentioned that we've loved, are the ones where the performances have really invited us to surrender into that world. And I think the crux for me is the writing of the characters, because eventually these are people who are going to lure you, hypnotize you into this world. So some of our most favorite films, whether in Indian cinema or internationally, you'll first remember the characters, you'll remember their dialogues. They are the hook points more than anything else. So it's very rewarding, and I'm happy I got a little taste of it, but it makes me want to do more and more, because like Sir said, and by the way, so I need to be on your set desperately, because it's very refreshing to hear a filmmaker
She's
have
talked
this
too much
approach.
Thama call.
We're manifesting this immediately today, guys.
No, but tell me, do you all feel that it's easier for an actor to make a world believable than a director or the rest of the production designer? Is it easier for an actor? Supposing if it was a green screen,
Yeah.
is it easier for you than for us?
Yeah, probably she would be able to.
Yeah.
answer this.
I think the way I would even imagine what is on that green screen, I don't think I have any business as an actor to try and control what will be there. So my
Then
performance,
how do you make it believable?
for me, that's my world. Green screen or no. I mean, I did an ad where I was playing an astronaut. I was shooting in mud. Okay. And I was an astronaut, and there's a full scene where I'm in space and stuff like that. Firstly, just the opportunity to be that person, right?
Astronaut in Mud
The
Island.
astronaut in mud. And I also think that just that collaborative spirit with your director is very important. That equation is very important.
No, but just coming back to Shriya's point, with Munjya as well, they
Well,
are reacting.
I would like to add to
Yeah.
what was just being discussed. Like right today, we had this conversation with the whole VFX team for Thama that people are going to look eventually at the face of the actor performing. Everything else around that, what we are building, maybe CG backgrounds or assets, are all to help the actor perform better. Because eventually, if you kind of look at everything in the frame, it's never that. I'm watching the film, I'm watching the performance, that's taking me ahead into the story. So if you kind of screw that up, and if I'm starting to, as an audience, look at everything around the actor, then I'm never going to be with the film, right?
But how are you
So-
briefing the actor when things are not physically there? In Munjya, I'm sure there are
a
points
lot
where
of I feel a lot of times the actor is dependent on director telling him what's happening. Like in Munjya, Abhay did not know where I'm going to be putting the golem in. Every time I used to tell him, look here, and there used to be 2 tennis balls, where he used to look and imagine the actor perform. Or then I used to tell him that, okay, at timing, and it's very technical. I used to tell him that from here, at the count of 4, he's going to jump and he's going to go there. So at the count of 8, you have to look there. So I used to actually give him counts, and he used to kind of follow those. So it can be very difficult in that sense to not look as if you
It's technical.
are. But yeah, I feel it's very difficult for actors to kind of perform in CG-heavy films.
Yeah.
Because one, if you're, as she said, if your backgrounds are CG, you're imagining it. But if your co-actors are also CG, then you're kind of really wondering what's going to happen there, and you're totally dependent on the end product to kind of put it all together.
I spoke
So-
to Shiba Chadda recently. I was asking her about Ramayana, and she said that this is something she really struggled with. She said that because it's so blue screen or whatever, she said it's tough to find emotional truth when you're really relying on sort of just following instructions versus connecting emotionally.
Yeah.
with
But
something.
trust plays a huge role in a setup like this. And also, just to add to what you said earlier, even though you mentioned that, yes, you kind of surrender to the actor's performance, but sometimes something as technical as badly done CGI, badly drawn
Yeah, can screw
abs
it up, yeah.
can be very distracting.
Yeah.
So I think at least with films which are green screen heavy, there is a lot of dependency on everything going right
Yeah.
for this world to come together.
Which is really not in your control as an actor.
No.
Yeah. Aditya, I think we've waited long enough. I think we can ask you about Thama now. I've been very patient.
See, I'll tell you what. I've just put out the teaser. I am 2 months away from the release of that film. It's still taking shape. So for me to talk about the film right now, apart from what you've seen there,
Drop some hints.
is a little too much. But see, I'll tell you what. This, I would just say, it's very fascinating to see the last 1.5 day when the teaser has been out, to see how many theories people have made about the film on their own. And it's amazing to see they have come up with their own storylines. They have come up with their own what if this happens and that happens. And none of that, in a sense, is happening in the film. So it's good to know that people are so invested in it, where people have actually come up with a certain sense of how the whole universe is going to travel in the film. But this is that film where you will definitely see the horror comedy universe coming together a little better, because you've had these standalone films with Bhedia and with Munjya, which have been their own films, right? Now this is the film where you see it coming together a little better.
Which means more cameos. That's my take.
Well,
on
I'll
that.
not tell you who's
Okay.
coming into the film.
Okay,
That I would prefer to kind of have that as a surprise when you walk into the
Fair.
theater.
But the teaser's looking great. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
All the best.
Thank you.
But I did want to ask you, how fun is it on a writing level to come up with the rules of this universe? And also, vampires are not a very Indian
Yeah,
monster.
yeah.
You know, it's a very imported creature, which I know sounds silly. So,
Yeah.
we were talking about that earlier. So, is that tough to really try and root that into our mythology?
No, see, I'll tell you what. I feel it is important to go back when you're kind of doing a film like this. You're starting onto a film like this. It's very important to go back and trace what kind of a vampire and what film are you making, right? The minute I take vampire as a Transylvanian, East European creature, then I'm screwed because I'll never make a film that is even close to what a vampire film here would look like. So we did our research of going back to the roots of if there were vampires in India, if there were references to vampires here, and we found some really interesting references. So we moved with those ahead. So yeah, like you will see when you see the film, you will see it is not typically the vampire you know of from Twilight or from Vampire Diaries, all those series, but we have our own take, and it is connected to some referencing that is very mythical here. Yeah. So for me, that was most exciting. But why I wanted to do the film primarily was because I found this. And I said, man, this is very exciting. Let's move ahead with this. So yeah, it'll be a bit of a surprise that some myths will be broken. I will not follow all the references of vampires that you know of. We follow a few, but our references have now directly come from some really crazy, very interesting, really back there, Betal references we found.
Yeah.
So how we connected to into the film is something you'll watch.
But it must be so fun to sort of form your own mythology.
Yeah.
Just speaking of creating exciting new worlds, Ram, I have to ask you about your recent adventures with virtual reality. You know, I'm very curious to know what it is about this new technology. You know, you've talked about how you feel like it's a new frontier for immersive storytelling. What is it about this that excites you so much? And can we see virtual reality films in the near future? What does this look like?
So first, I was just frustrated that it seems like a technology that may just what they call as shelving, where you buy it and then it's kept on your shelf. So I was so actually genuinely worried that here is something which is going to be a whole new language and nobody knows how to use it. And because they're using it for IPL, it hasn't worked. They're using it for gaming, THR. Nobody's really, might as well do it on your TV or on your phone.
It's like a gimmick.
Yeah, exactly. And so first I started fooling around with it over the last 2 or 3 years. And in the last 6 months, I began to feel like I now say in a slightly bombastic kind of manner, I began to feel like Dada Saheb Phalke of the VR world. And so this language, which is what Griffith or Eisenstein or whatever invented in terms of montage and cut and close-up, it's all gone. Okay, you're no longer using that in VR. So you can't afford to first look at the world in a realistic way. Because the world, first of all, is not it's not proscenium arch of like a mobile phone or of an IMAX screen, which is all proscenium arch eventually. This is beyond proscenium arch.
Because you can look in any direction.
In any direction. And then how do you make sure that while looking in any direction, you don't throw up? So
unique filmmaking challenges.
Yeah, exactly. And then how do you do it so that there's no cut and there's no close-up and there's none of that? And so I began to fool around with it and therefore actually went back to the way that Indian miniature art is, which is that we began to, like it was only in the 18th century, and I think primarily thanks to Raja Ravi Verma, that we lost our eyes and that our eyes were colonized. But before Western art came in, Indian miniature art was looking at the world in a 360 kind of way because the perspectives were not real. If you look at any miniature art, it's what I call as vertical depth. And so no longer am I looking at the world in a horizontal depth kind of way. I'm now looking at the world in a vertical depth kind of way. And so these were all the things that I started fooling around with. The first one that we've made, it's a 5-minute short film on the Bhagavad Gita. And I'm interested in the Gita. It was there in Aarya also in season 1. And so that's what we have. And now we want to start, we have a plan to make like, let's say 24 a year of like 5-minute films on our mythology and all the rest.
So you still see it for shorts. You're not looking at features or shows.
I want to, I like if your theater was your temple, now I want to make your temple your theater.
That's really disrupting distribution.
Yeah. So that's what's going to be the plan for the future. So that when my career is over because some critics didn't like my work.
You don't have to look at me.
on that Friday mafia that I'm like looking at saying, okay, that's it. Nobody's going to give me work after this.
I feel like you planned this.
So now I'm creating a sustainable career for myself, which is outside of the traditional return of investment Friday situation.
You're saying that as if critics matter.
They do to me. They do
I
to
tend
me.
to know something about the subject. Trust me, they don't.
They do to me. I read everything, and you know it sticks with you, and you are in the business of validation. You do want validation. We all want validation. As much as I'd like to say that, you know, I'm not here for praise, I like praise. And if somebody says like, oh, but this is, and sometimes it gets personal, and sometimes it gets brutal, and sometimes it gets, how shall I say, something which like it takes you, you know, some years to recover from.
This always becomes therapy. I didn't expect it to get
Yes.
therapy so fast, but cool. Moving on. I apologize for...
No,
Yeah.
but one of the nice things, the reason that I said that I'd come here today is because when Suchin actually does review something, and even if he doesn't like
I did
it,
not plant
He
this.
praised you.
Where is this going?
No, but फिर भी he says it. He does it with grace and courtesy, and therefore, it's something which when I'm watching the work of mine that he's reviewed that he perhaps has not liked, the way that he goes about it is something at least which, you know, not only makes me sort of understand what the problems are, but it tells it to me in a way in which, like, my job actually as a director is to say no. Okay, that's what we do. That's our life. We keep saying no, ye nahi chahiye, aisa mat karo, etc. But it's how we say it, right? And I think one of the jobs of a critic is how you say that. And so I said yes. I've on antibiotics for the last 3 or 4 days, and because Suchin said, I said I'll come. I'll do this because
Very kind
he
of you.
says this in a gracious kind of way. Yeah.
I really didn't ask him to say any of that, but I'm framing that. Just coming back to the job of a director, Shreya, I wanted to ask you, you mentioned the word conviction, you know, because when we are watching these worlds, apart from the writing, it really is the actor selling it to us, you know, allowing us to buy into that. But I also wanted to ask you about pitch, because, you know, the pitch of a Mandala Murders is very different to a Taaza Khabar, is very different to a Mirzapur. So how do you know, for this character, for this world, at what level to pitch it?
I'm a director's actor, so I really enjoy trying to understand what my director's vision is. And I truly like that process to be collaborative. Of course, you have your instincts.
Say this in that Mandala Murders way, no? The same line, the
So
same
not-
line. Come on.
No,
And say the
no,
same line in that
please.
way, no?
I don't want this
Please.
pressure right now. No.
You have to make the 360. Yeah.
I'm going to say no like that scream now. No.
I like the way my directors tell me what to do.
Did I act like that?
Now you're having fun.
I'm having fun, I know.
Your inner actor coming out.
No, because it's like saying winter is coming.
Yes.
You don't say it's a little thanda hai yaar, thoda lag raha hai winter aa raha hai na.
Nah, yeah. But I mean, that's also, it's a refreshing departure from different work. So you're very excited to kind of pitch that work differently.
Yeah.
But you're right, there's a very fine line. And also many a times, you're not going to be able to control the other performances, right? So again, you really rely on your director to kind of give you that sense of it. And also, I feel like sometimes it's not about comparing it to will people think it is realistic or not.
Because we're not looking for realism as an audience for that world.
Exactly,
We're very
but
much
there's still a fine line.
Yeah.
But there's believability.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the aim. That's the aim, to make it human.
Yeah.
However, if there's a world where you don't have to make it human, you have to be a little animalistic about it. Again, for example, you're not really seeing all the VFX things around you. So there you have to surrender. I don't think as an actor, you can be insecure about, oh, I've done this, but how will that look? How will this look? Trust is a huge factor.
in yourself as well, I'm assuming.
Absolutely. And how the shot is taken, in everything. But it's really fun. And I wish we, as actors also, and I wish we end up making more such films, series or films, because in the last few years, a lot of the content that's come out there has been rooted in reality,
Yeah.
if I may say so. So I love that, like, Aditya has focused on sort of, what is the word?
This
to
three-verse
describe
fantasy
this
universes.
this fantasy universe. And I also think कि addictive भी हो जाता है when you get a tease of
Yeah.
how exciting it can be.
You want more.
You want to do more for
And
sure.
Aditya, for you, when you're directing actors, you also like tell them it's mythical school or it's a different school of acting when they're in.
Yeah, we do have a lot of conversation in the beginning, like before we go on floor. I have to tell them where the world we're talking about, like world building. I have to tell them what world do I have in my mind, and I totally go to storyboards and concept art, and I show them this is what it eventually is going to be, because I need that referencing for all of us to kind of think in one direction. But when I'm seeing a shot on the monitor after it's being performed, the actor sees himself perform, but me and the supervisor, VFX supervisor, are looking at what all is going to come there. So we have to see to it that we keep the actor performing in the right direction. But I'll tell you what, it's very difficult for an actor to kind of imagining it all and kind of doing it as if he knows exactly what's going to happen. A lot of times we are even winging it. On the day of the set, we are like, "Arey, ye nahi ho raha work." Kuch alag hi karte. And then the VFX supervisor running around trying to figure it out how alag kaise karne wale, because it's very technical.
Yeah.
But I feel if you have your concept right in terms of your concept art, your concept referencing, if you kind of get that right, your color palettes, your world building assets, all of that before you go on floor, the whole process becomes very easy for everyone, because all of them know, okay, this is the tone of the film, and if you go mythical, they know which direction mythical is also, because it's a very vast idea. Where all you can go in Indian mythical also is very vast.
Yeah.
So there has to be a certain specific idea that as a filmmaker you need to have.
But you mentioned VFX supervisor. I do have to ask you. I feel like on an ambition level, Indian cinema is very much going big now. It's very exciting. This three-verse Ramayana. It feels like we're really going to attempt our own MCU, our own Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, etc. But the VFX question, it's not been famously our area of expertise. But I will give credit where it's due. I do think Maddock and this three-verse, in terms of not just execution, more imagination. Nobody's doing it like you guys. So why is that? And what are the lessons that we can learn elsewhere? Because it's clearly not across the board.
We are learning lessons every day. Like, we know there's a certain level people expect from us, or from Indian films, Hindi cinema. And we also know that to get there, it is a journey. So I was very well aware that, okay, with Munjya, there could have been a lot more work done on the character. But the level at which I had to kind of even say, okay, this is it, has to be because also, I'll tell you what, there are multiple components here when you kind of are making a VFX film. The most important one is the budget. Then comes the time you give the team to work on a certain film. There are 3 and 4 years of post-production that films like an Avengers or any of those films have, because they really invest. And it's a very direct, very calculative, number-oriented game, the whole thing. So you need to know that, okay, if you're going to spend 3 years on a film, you're going to basically hire a workforce for those 3 years on that film. And these are really good artists who are going to be on an hourly level working on your film. So when you're making a film at that scale, you can kind of push it a little further there. But when you know that, okay, for me, Munjya was purely a mid-budget film because I was making a film with a newcomer. Yeah. I was making a film that was very rooted and very Maharashtrian in the culture sense of it. So how much can you kind of experiment and how much can you spend on it? So we knew a threshold. So we were like, in this, what is the best we can do? We do it. Okay. And we try to do it in that sense. Now, definitely you can do a lot better. But now we see the confidence of people onto the film. We see, okay, we are making that money on the film. That is a mid-budget film. People are loving these kind of films. So we can do a lot better. So it's actually an every film game. Every film you push it further and push it further, at least at Maddock. And with Thama now, I've kind of pushed it a little further. I've built a little more bigger world. Here I don't have a lot of 3D assets like Munjya to work around, because vampires are fairly simple. They've got their fangs out and their eyes change color. So it's really easy. It kind of, for me, it was a shock. I said, I remember Ayushman saying, कि अभी मैं vampire बनता तो क्या होता है? I said, कुछ नहीं, तो दांत लगा, lens pen or behave like a vampire. And for me, it was like, this is it. Because with Munjya, we had to go through a proper, like a 5 different takes for every shot. Because here, Abhay has to imagine something there. Then we have to put a 3D character there. Then a plate. All of that. So every film has their own challenges. But see, with VFX, I feel the benchmark is set because people are watching world content. People are going to call you out and they're going to say, okay, we saw this in that film, which was a Hollywood production, and then you kind of are not matching to that level and quality. We are all aware and we want to get there, and we know we will get there. So to get there, every film we push it further and further and further. And it's great that people are watching movies and giving us that confidence that you can go one step further ahead and do something better.
But I will say sometimes I understand that's the execution challenge. Sometimes it just is an imagination. It's just there's no imagination and care. I will use this opportunity to plug something I tweeted because I'm here and I can do that. Somebody really needs to give YRF the number for Amar Kaushik's Pedia VFX wolf guy, because the first scene of War 2 was embarrassing. That wolf. So so just some people care. That's all I'll say. You don't need to respond to that. That's my opinion.
I'll tell you what. With Amar, and I can respond on Amar's behalf.
Yeah.
We do a lot of these internal conversations where we know that the number of VFX shots that we have in a movie, totally also we have to backwork it, saying that, okay, this we know is our budget. And I would say definitely that the way Hindi film equations are in terms of numbers and budgets, the amount of money you would pay a big star in a film is the VFX budget for us in that film. Because for us, that VFX budget is the big star in the film. So that's how these projects are kind of worked out on, which is great for a filmmaker because I know I'm going to get a massive budget in the budget of the film to do VFX. But when I know that, I also kind of try to backwork it and say, okay, I don't want to go splurging it out on overboard where my producer is like, okay, what are you doing? This film can't be made. So with Bhedia, with Munjya, where you had a 3D asset character, and the film was dependent on those, we had to really kind of plan it well. Okay, you have 150 shots. Let's tell this story in those 150 shots and let's tell it the best. So, and it's great, man, when you kind of are making those kind of movies in those budgets, because then it's really fulfilling to see that when a film does really well, you know that, okay, you've kind of won it at all levels and you can do better now. Rather than kind of looking back and saying this film was really costly and people didn't come and now what do you do next? So, yeah.
That doesn't even include the budget of the VFX to make the actors look a certain way. I think the app budget is separate.
Well, I don't know that.
I also want to ask all of you the AI question. It is something that scares the hell out of me as an audience. The fact that, AI films are now a thing, it makes you question, are actors required? Is a crew required? Whether it's ChatGPT, whether it's ideation, whether it's VFX, all of that. So how much does it worry you? Is it just me? Are we just fighting technology? Should we embrace it? Because it just feels like it really puts a dampener on what creativity is and what I consider creativity to be.
So with AI, I'm thinking, with VR AI, I'm sure you're doing all of it.
So, see, the root word of technology comes from a Greek word called techne, which means art. Okay? So first, I think we need to embrace technology because everything in cinema has happened because of technology, whether it was sound or whether it was cinema verite in the 1960s where we had 16mm film, or whether we had a lens which was open to a certain aperture, or whether anything that we are doing today is because of technology. Now, AI is one more technology. I'm embracing it, okay, because I feel that it will liberate me. Now, given the danger of the conversations that we are in terms of, how will it replace us, how will it replace humans, and what will happen, and all the rest of that, certainly since the last time that we had such conversations was when the internet came up. Now it's 20 years later, and this is the first time everybody's saying AI. We've not had that kind of conversation. When I tell people I'm making virtual reality, they don't even care because they're saying, "Nahin, lekin AI use kar raha hai ki nahi?" Okay. I don't think there is, like my nephew who's a doctor at Tata Memorial, and he said that, let me just read it out for a minute. AI will not replace all doctors, but it will replace the doctors that don't use it. So that's where we are.
So it'll replace the folks who are not using it. It's people with AI will replace people without AI.
Yeah,
I do feel everyone's going to use it.
Yeah.
Everyone's using it.
We are, all of us are. And it's a great brainstorming partner, by the way. Yeah, I knew what to say because I put it onto ChatGPT today. They said, speak nice things about Suchin.
And ChatGPT a raise.
And it said, have fun.
That's the most tragic thing I've ever heard. But Shreya, what about you? Does it scare you as an actor? Because like if AI, I spoke to a filmmaker recently who said, you don't need a crew. You don't need actors. I mean, and
of course you need a crew. Of
I would
course
like to
you
think
need
so.
actors. I mean, recently I shot something which was a very new experience where I have to be in front of the camera, sit and say different words, names, okay? Just like Rahul, Suchin, Aditya, Shriya, and just not be very animated, just look into the camera and say these words. And that company created birthday videos, right?
Yeah.
So, happy birthday, Neha. I've not said happy birthday, Neha, but based on these syllables and everything that I've said, they created these videos.
But isn't that creepy? They could
It is. If done not properly,
Misused,
it's
yeah.
creepy. So I think the negative aspects
But look
for
at
actors.
it like this. Now you have a digital asset of yourself
Yes.
that you can put in your will.
What is this positive perspective?
I mean, I'm sure at some point we're going to have to have positive perspectives at the rapid pace at which it's evolving. But the scary parts are there with how it can be misused, because I don't think there are legalities, especially with actors. There's always a fear, will there be a video?
Yeah.
And it's so realistic sometimes, and
Yeah.
we've seen unfortunate examples.
Yeah.
But I don't think we can be that casual about it, because things can get bad if they have to get bad, and then it's trouble for everybody.
Because people will misuse it.
Yes. So I'm hoping that with time there are some legalities in place, and I'm sure we'll also understand it's too early to figure out how bad things can get.
Yeah.
But I don't think that one can ever replace the human element that the creative arts need
You'd hope so.
to thrive.
Yeah. But unfortunately, we will have to end it there. But thank you to all of you. And in terms of just having a positive perspective, I will manifest more massive fantasy universes. We're very excited about Thama. We'll manifest you to be a part of more massive
Thank
worlds
you.
and more virtual reality worlds.
Yes,
And
thank
most
you.
of all, I want to thank ChatGPT for saying nice things about me. But thank you all of you.
Thank
No,
you.
thank
Thank
you everybody
you.
for being
Thank
a
you.
great audience. Thank you, Suchin. Thank you.
Thank you.
Shriya.
Thank
Thank you, sir.
you.
Thank you.